After learning how to master lucid dreaming, I started to play with astral projection. If you've seen my story, you'll understand how it is that I came about practicing that skill. Unfortunately, because of my headspace, I didn't end up going to the best of places within the astral realms. You see, like attracts like. My vibrational frequency was messed up emotionally. I was all over the place. And I was dealing with breakups, and I was being heavily manipulated by the people who I thought loved me. And my friends, who are my friends? Why are people stealing from me? Why is everything just going to crap? I couldn't even afford to live properly, because when you're younger, you want to grow up fast so that you can do everything independently. But you're a kid. Your parents pay for your food, It's really frustrating at times. And everything just got to me. The stress just stressed me out. And then it ended up bleeding into my astral projection practices. Now, I had no intention to have sex in the astral realms until certain things started to approach me who had that idea in mind. The first time I was approached, it was during a night where I was kind of heavily upset. I astral projected by accident at night. At night there is no light. Literally, the sun is out of the sky. And if you have no electronics on, no candles, nothing that could emit a light source, even your phone, then it's easier for things to manifest within your space. You see it on the movies a lot. Night falls. I'm upset. I pull away from Facebook and I lay down. So many things are going through my head. So many triggers previously before I got off the internet. Pop-ups showing breasts, and I would see things on TV a lot, music videos and posters even outside of my house. Big posters of people that were half naked. All of these things contributed towards me being triggered into a hyper-aroused state. So energetically, I was prime for quite a strange experience in the astrals. Now, like I said, like attracts like. So when I leave the body in this emotionally disturbed state, I ended up bumping into a creature which was also of the same vibration. But the fact of the matter is, we're not physical in the astrals. We're energy, okay? Now, there are certain perks when it comes to being that of a formless nature. Everyone in 3D, as it is right now, wants to try to look beautiful. And we have people on this earth that have gone so far that they've ended up doing self-surgeries to themselves rather than booking an appointment with a plastic surgeon. They are willing to cut themselves to look a certain way. Here, in 3D, cutting off the flesh. So is it really surprising that there are beings of a formless nature that would choose to make themselves look more pleasing to the eye? If everybody in 3D had the ability to shapeshift, I will bet you guys $1,000. Heck, take all my money if I'm wrong. There will be people in this world that will deliberately choose to just stand there and shapeshift. Maybe to get rid of a mole on their face. Change the colour of their eyes, the length of their hair, the height of their body, the size of their appendage. If we were given the ability to shapeshift, we would do it. Astral beings, they're just doing what they can, And I guess it's kind of out of some sort of sick consideracy. They're being considerate of how they could potentially make people feel, or at least if they're good beings. This one, however, wasn't so good. You can feel it coming off her, okay? As I'm sat there on my bed, she's walking up to me, and she's trying to mask her emotions. Now here, you can tell if someone's got an agenda, right? You can tell by looking at them, you can feel it coming off of them. In the astral realm, heighten that feeling by about 10,000, 100,000 even. It's obvious when somebody's trying to manipulate you or when they're trying to hide their energy. You can feel it. You can just feel it. Protruding from them like a gross aura. She stood, with a smile on her face, clearly aroused, and, well, hiding what she looked like. She then walked up to me and she kneeled down and placed her hands on the inside of my thighs. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, I don't want anything to do with this because she doesn't feel right. She's just not quite put together properly, you know? I mean, she tried, she really did, to look the part. But there are just some things about energy that you can't hide. So I told her, I confronted her, I said, look, I know you're not the person you're trying to be. Show yourself, or just get out of my space. She stopped smiling, and then she dematerialized her face, and yet the static that made up her composure stayed within a certain point of space. It then reformed and hardened to create what she actually looked like. Could never have guessed it. If you were to get bed sheets, blue, dark blue, navy bed sheets, and put it over a woman's head and tie a rope around her neck, that is what she looked like. She had this indentation where her mouth should be, where she was trying to breathe. And she was just silent, eerie silent. And I asked her what her name was. She wouldn't speak to me. I told her to get up and leave. She wouldn't move. So I said, fine. If you want to leave, I will. And I got up and I walked out of my bedroom. That was the first experience I had with something that was trying to manipulate me by deceiving me into having a 3D experience. Because you see, entities like this have no idea what it's like to have sex. They don't. They can only draw from your memory. They literally know how to plug and play into your mind and use what you've experienced in 3D to structure and shape their astral body so that they can have some sort of a mock experience, a fake experience of what it could be like if they were, well, living. That's just some entities. The others are people who have passed on and they're not finished yet. You know, I'll talk about it on this series, these series of videos, because I've had sex with many different beings in the astrals after learning how to discern this energy. Now remember, this was just my first time. I became good at discerning energy. After a while, I learned how to change my frequency energetically so I wasn't emotionally disturbed. And as the years went on, as I got good at astral projecting, when I did leave the body, I could control it. I can control how long I was out for. I can control who I was with. And it even got to the point where I met up with another woman who was also an astral projectioner here on Earth. There was another experience though. And it helps to know that there are some things in the astrals that actually have your back. You know, some people may call them spirit guides, angels. Spirit guides is more accurate in this sense. Because as I sit up out of my body again, this will be maybe, about 2 years later, I sit up out of my body and I look at the end of my room. Not this room, this is a different house, but in my other room it's really long. You know, there's paint all splashed over the walls. And as I look down the room, there's just my computer desk, nothing more. But 4 years ago there used to be a bed there, because I used to share the room with my brother. Now on my right, I have this large mirror that is able to reflect the other end of my room, you know, the end furthest away from my bed, where the desk should be. Because in the mirror, the desk isn't there. It's the bed, the same bed, and even the wallpaper has been painted blue. It's literally mirroring to me my old bedroom when my brother used to live in the room with me, okay? Now this is important because as I look away from the mirror, I notice that the space in front of me, the desk, starts to shift and phase out of existence. It's like the two dimensions overlap each other. And my brother's bed is now there. Not only that, but there are 3 women on the bed in their birthday suit. But they don't look quite right. They look sickly. Their eyes, you know, the sockets are really deep. Pale skin, sweaty as if they're in some sort of a high fever. And they start doing this with their fingers, trying to, I guess, compel me to walk over there. Now remember, I've gotten pretty good at this point at discerning energy, noticing energy. There was no way I was going over there. Period. Nothing, no form of nudity could get me there. But as I stand up, the whole experience is interrupted by this guy who just bursts open into my room. And he has red eyes. They're really nice. Red eyes, like a hazily brown, but then they start to turn red. And pale skin. And he stops me like this and says, "Ryan, stop. Just stop." He's wearing a hat, kind of like this one, but lighter grey. He said, "You don't want to go over there. You don't want nothing to do with what they're doing over there. Okay?" I was like, "Yeah, I know. It feels weird, right?" And then as I'm saying that, I look past his face back into the mirror, and I could see their true form. Mirrors. Brilliant tools in the Astrals. Great for unveiling hidden agendas when it comes to the appearance of oneself. Okay? And as I look on the bed, I see the three women. Only they're not women anymore. You know when you get blue tack and you stretch the tack, right? And sometimes there's even holes in the tack? Imagine three beings, really small head, made out of a gas, and they're trying to become solid. And as they're trying to reach over to me, their arms are becoming stretched like the blue tack, or the chewing gum even. Their bodies seem to be linked into each other, merged into each other as they emit this strange pinkish blue light from the matter of their gas, their body, what they look like. Not only that, but they had no eyes. And when they tried to speak, it was as if their mouth or their lips were glued together. So as they were opening their mouth, it would tear their lips. But again, there was no flesh involved here. It was all gas trying to form as matter, pinkish blue gas. These creatures literally looked like that. Something out of your worst nightmare. There's no surprise there. We completely left the room, and me and Daniel just started talking to each other, you know? Yeah, his name. Daniel, he told me when he died, how he died, how long he's been in the Astrals for, and that he was going around in the Astral realms and he was preventing people from falling into these traps. He was a guide in that sense. In spirit. He had passed on. He didn't have to look like some sort of angel. He just descended from the heavens. Brilliant white wings with the energy and the halo protruding from his head. No. He was a human once. Just being kind.
So this experience happened in January of 2018, and here is what I recall. So the night began with a few of these, what we call in-between dreams, dreaming experiences, kind of mixed with astral experiences, and this kept going until it began to transform itself into a full lucid astral type of experience. And the state of mind I was in was a bit troubled or upset. Now, I was having a dream, and I don't know if it was a dream or more than a dream, but I was part of some group or some community or forum on the internet, and I was unfairly kicked out of that community, right? So that was kind of the dream or the idea, the state of mind I was in. So I was a little bit upset, a little bit angry. Now, as things went along, I found myself becoming more and more lucid in some type of environment, and as, again, the experience became more and more clear, I soon found myself with that familiar, almost waking level of consciousness and vibratory feeling in my body that indicates that I have left my body. And I looked around to see that I was in a downtown section of a city. So this city was what I believe to be Astral Los Angeles. At the time, I was living in Los Angeles, and so it was common that I would have experiences on the astral spectrum of LA. So I looked around the city, and it was a busy place, and something you often see on the astral spectrum are things that look very out of place by our reckoning, whether it's extraterrestrials walking around, people with magical abilities, or non-human entities. So I saw one such non-human entity as I continued to explore the downtown section. What I saw was clearly what we could define as a devil woman. So it was a woman who was quite, I guess you could say, buxom, very attractive. However, you couldn't miss the fact that her feet were basically hooves, as you would expect on a horse or a cow. So this hooved woman was hanging around this busy area, and she was kind of trying to solicit people as they walked by. And someone who was nearby saw that I was curious about her, and this stranger offered me a warning to stay away from her because her whole gambit was to manipulate and seduce men. At this point, I realized I was projecting, and I wanted to have some kind of a memorable experience, and given that she was looking for a man to solicit, I realized, well, look, I am not, desperate to get with this hooved chick, no matter how attractive she might look from her legs up. And I decided, well, I can maybe talk to her, interview her, and see what I can learn from her. So I went up to her and gave the usual speech that, hey, I'm astral projecting, I'd like to meet you. And she, of course, saw this as an opportunity to make me into one of her victims. So we began walking, and we walked away from the city center. And it did seem like maybe something related to time and space skipped ahead, because it didn't take very long before we were no longer in the downtown area, but we were on what seemed to be a trail out closer to nature. What I determined at this point was that this succubus type of woman was trying to manipulate my emotions in a way in regard to the state of mind that I was in, which is I was a bit upset and angry about something that happened. And she was saying, that's great because, together we can destroy your enemies. And so she was trying to kind of get me going, maybe get me, whipped up into like thoughts of revenge, thoughts of her being the thing that's going to be my savior. But I wasn't buying any of it because I knew what was happening. I knew that it was kind of a sad attempt at manipulating me. But I kept walking with her because I wanted to see where she was leading me, but I also wanted to make this into an experience that I could journal later. As we continued walking, what became clear is that she must have realized that I was not going to be one of her male prospects. In fact, I made it clear that I was astral projecting and I just wanted to learn about her, and this seemed to release some of her defenses during our socialization. Now, something interesting happened at this point as we passed some river areas of the trail, or I should say maybe a pond or some water. Whatever the case may be, she stopped what she was doing and then she picked up a frog. So there was a frog hopping around, she picked it up, and she did something to it, and before my eyes, this frog had transformed itself into kind of like a little winged fairy type creature. I actually have the dialogue in my notes, so let's take a quick look. According to my notes, she said, "Every creature has the potential to be a greater entity, even one so stupid as that frog. Maybe that frog would take many lifetimes, working its way up a ladder of consciousness until eventually it incarnates as an actual human being or some other creature of greater sophistication. What I did was reflect in itself that greater potential, part of its true essence that is buried deep and within and brought out to the surface. The problem is, however, it's still going to be extremely dumb and will eventually revert back to being just a frog, which I guess that means you can temporarily bring out the higher essence of a creature, and they can remember that if only momentarily, but when you set it back down again, it's going to revert back to where it used to be." She then expressed pity for this kind of fairy as it flew around bumping into things. It's such a poor, hapless, stupid creature for now, shortly before it returned to being a frog. I also got the sense that this devil woman had a strong interest in other people and their potential, including even these smaller life forms whom she felt responsible for taking care of. However, she didn't have much pity for the damage she caused, in particular to what she considered to be weak-willed men. Nonetheless, at this point, I don't think she considered me to be a weak-willed man, which is why she was letting me get to know her. After this demonstration, we continued up the trail until we got to a mansion on the outskirts of town. So this was a pretty nice Victorian-style house. So we went inside, and as we went inside, one of her friends came up to me, and this friend was also, like her, some kind of succubus, same species. The difference is that this first girl I met, she had blonde hair, and this new one was a brunette. What happened next? Actually, we played pool. We played billiards in the living room of the mansion. And this continued for a while, basically hanging out with these two succubus ladies until I began to feel that familiar pull that I was being brought back down into my body. As this was happening, I looked between both of them and I said, "It was nice to meet both of you, but it looks like it's time for me to go, and I wish the two of you the best." As this happened, I woke up back in my bed.
I forgot to tell you guys about this actually. So, when I went to Jamaica, there was a lot of times, it's happened 3 or 4 times, where I would go to sleep and a succubus would try me. And so succubi or incubi are essentially sexual demons. And I used to have these a while back. I remember when we first started demon hunting, it was like this giant being had its like sub-demons, and it would send them your way. So it was really like a layer. So if you wanted to get to the big archdemon or the dragon, you had to go through its like smaller demons. And one of the first ones, I remember back in the day, one of the first ones it sent me was an incubus. So me and my friend Astral traveled together. We're like, we're gonna hunt down this one demon that's been doing horrible things to people, even while in the physical. So we decided we wanted to go to the Astral room and fight it. And when we did this, I remember the first night, just as I left my body, there was an incubus waiting at the end of my bed. And it was sitting right there. And it got me, it really did get me. Because then after we woke up, my homie was like, "Yo, where'd you go later?" And I was like, "Yeah, I got caught. It got me." And the next night, it tried to send another one, and I was good, right? I was like, I conquered this one this time. But then Broly was gone. I was like, "What happened?" And they were like, "Oh, yeah, it got me because it sent something that was related to trauma." And I was like, oh, like the way it sends certain demons, knowing that it's going to get us in that way, was very fascinating. Now, when I went to Jamaica, it sent 3 or 4. And because I've been doing this for a while, it's like I already knew it was a succubus. So like, say it was like a being that the first one that came up to me, it caught me off guard. It got me. And then just as it was getting started, one of my guides yelled, "No!" And the being went, "Ugh," and then it like ran away, and then everything changed, and then I went doing whatever I was doing, whatever mission I was going forward with. And then the second time, it was the next night, I knew it was a succubus or an incubus, but I was like, it was telling me, it was like, just relax. Like, it was telling me literally, just relax. And it was disguised as a family member, and it was like, just relax. And I was like, okay. So then I was relaxing, and then it was getting close to my groin, and it tried to pull down my pants. And that's when I went, nope. And I literally like threw it away. I threw it, and then I kept going about my mission. And the other times, I knew it was trying to pull up again, bro, again. So then the third night, this time I had to show it like, you can't get me this time. Like, good try though. And this has happened many times whenever I go on an intense mission, is they'll send a succubus or an incubus or another type of demon. But the most common ones, the first ones that usually send are the sexual ones. I don't know why. And now I'm in a stance where it's like I could spot them a mile away and conquer them. But at the beginning, it was hard. And at the beginning, I'm meaning months at the beginning, it was like it would send it and I would keep training to defeat them. I'd go to Astral school, literally go into the Astral realm to the schools and learn how to spot them, and they'll teach you how to spot them. or I would literally just go into Astral Arena, or I would just go into Astral and do missions and then learn as I go. It's like if a Succubus or Incubus comes, I'm going to learn as I go. And that was the hardest way to learn, because then they come and then you just learn as you go. So it'll take you months, but every time one comes, you learn something new. So I've learned a lot about these Succubuses and Incubus, and I want to say this to people that are facing these and that are demon hunting, is that especially if you're fighting greater demons, they're going to send their smaller little ones in different ways. Maybe it's an Incubus or Succubus. It could be any type of demon. It could be one literally just to cast fear onto you from the past. Like literally get anything that scars you from the past and try and make you relive it in the astral, in the dream realm. Or maybe it's like it's disguised as a person. It's literally reptilian, like it changed form and is disguised as someone that really hurts you. And then instead of going on your mission, you're running from this thing. It literally triggers trauma and fear, whatever it can to trigger trauma and fear, or use lust, which is basically like one of the lowest vibrations. It's feeding on pleasure. So if you get these, just so you know, especially as a demon hunter or shadow hunter, whatever you want to call it, or if you're an astral mercenary, we call it in my server, where you are astral traveling to battle or to do any sort of mission, you know what's up. You know what's up. Especially if it's a mission of you just want to travel the galaxy, see what's out there, or you want to talk with certain beings, whatever it means to be an astral mercenary to you. Just know when these demons come around, or these lower vibrational entities, especially these lower vibrational extraterrestrials, like archons, like low vibe reptilians. And I say that because not all reptilians are bad, but low vibration reptilians that are purposely deceiving you. You know what's good. I want to mention that quick because I know a lot of you watch my videos because you're an astral mercenary and you are learning, but I just want to say this. You are always going to learn as you go, and you're always going to use the astral realm to learn.
Dreaming attention. If you become into of a low frequency area, okay, and you don't cloak your avatar to kind of blend in with the surroundings, then you're going to get caught, basically. Get trapped, basically. Because these lower aspects of yourself, these egregors, are going to attack you, and they're going to mind control you and make you think certain things. They're going to make you have certain experiences. Which brings me to another point. What lowers your frequency in the astral? Drugs, alcohol, sex, okay? There's a lot of that going on in the astral. There's tons of that going on in the astral. So I highly recommend you do not do any type of drugs or alcohol or sleep around in 3D, as those things can open up many doors into the astral. Now let's talk about the unhealthy sexual experiences that can happen in the astral for a second. There are these very low frequency egregors, okay? And now being gay and transgenderism in the astral is different than in the physical world. I just want to make that perfectly clear, okay? I'm strictly talking about the astral. In the astral, if you come into contact with another being or an egregor of the same sex that wants to do something sexual with you that you don't want to do, that's not a good thing. You're going to have an experience that you don't want to have, okay? A lot of these succubus and incubus energies, spirits, entities, whatever you want to call them, are feeding off of your low frequency. If they can trick you, and they'll shapeshift into whatever they think that you want to see or whatever they think you want to feel, and then when you get too close to them, they'll blind you. They'll keep your eyes shut so you can't see who they truly are, okay? So these are just being tricked. And this stuff happens in the lower astral. Everybody experiences this if you venture there at some point or another. but it's just another challenge to overcome, another challenge to keep yourself so pure and to keep your mind so sharp and so clear and to keep your and to sharpen your intuition. All of these things are challenges. They're tests. Okay, so be careful of these low vibrational sexual egregors that are going to try to entice you into having these experiences that you don't want to have. Okay. There's also a type of astral sex that is extremely high frequency. It's the exact opposite of what these lower vibrational sexual egregors are putting forth. I'll go into that into another video. Drug use. These entities will try to drug you. They'll try to drug you, trap you, and mind controlling you. This is happening all over the astral to countless people and children. It is the main reason why we put together to group and why we started the missions, was to save people from these types of experiences. There's a lot of bad stuff going on in the astral.
So I had a friend, this girl, she had a nightmare. And so I talked to her in the morning. She says, "Yeah, Rich, I had this really bad night. It was like I was being raped, and it was like really creepy and icky, and goons and goblins and all that stuff." And I'm going, "Oh, really? You want to look into this?" She said, "Yeah. You want to find out what this is about?" She says, "Yeah, I do, because that was just terrible. I don't want it happening again," because she couldn't tell, was this an astral abduction rape thing, or was it just a nightmare? What was it? So through the training over the years, I've learned how to help a person pull this stuff up, and it's like a traumatic incident reduction technique. It's the same thing, same technique used for past life regression work, but it works on nightmares, astral abductions, being abducted by ETs in the middle of the night. You wake up in the morning, you have a vague memory of some weird shit. If you have the ability to see mental imagery, and it's quite clear, then this technique will work and help you. So my friend, we'll call her Star, she started telling me about the incident. She said, "Well, she just remembered a little bit of the nightmare. I was being dragged through these tunnels by these two goons, and they had loincloth and kind of a leather straps around. These all sweaty pigs, and they were dragging me through these tunnels, and they're really rough. And then I remember something about being a sex slave to some fucking goon, and it was really disturbing." Okay, all right. So what we did is I have her move to the beginning of the incident, the best she can remember, and her visuals are good enough. She can see. She says, "Well, they're just dragging me through the tunnels. These two guys, these two goblin guys." Okay, what's the duration of the incident? Now, in our minds, we can pick that out. Just a sense of it. Well, it was about an hour. Yeah, right, about an hour and a half, maybe two. And what this does in your subconscious, it helps you lock onto the incident, and it started here and it goes to here. So now you have a time frame. Now, the technique is that you can move a person's attention with a command. It's not hypnosis. Everybody's wide awake. But I can say, "Move to the beginning of the incident and tell me what you see." And she goes, "Okay, these two goons." Mm-hmm. And this one guy has some kind of a leathery metal thing on his wrist. And I remember looking at that as he's holding my arm like this. I could see that. Okay. Now move through the incident to a point about a couple hours later. And so she's able to track, and she relives it. She's starting to remember more and more details. And then we get to the end, and it stops where she's dragged into this big chamber, and there's this big fucking giant goon, maybe 8 foot tall, you know, fat and sweaty and kind of a goblin looking thing. And he's quite interested. He's quite taken by the beauty and the charm of this human being in her astral form. Okay. So he had his goons astrally abduct her when she was sleeping. Okay. So, but this is all she could remember. And so this is common and normal. So what I do is have her move back to the beginning of the incident. Oh yeah, I'm in the tunnel. Okay. Now, I can ask, is there an earlier beginning to the incident? And that alone, you scan real fast. Oh, I saw a thing where the one goon grabbed me off, in my bedroom, grabs my arm. See, it could be just a flash incident, just a flash moment, without any of the details. But I say, okay, move to the beginning of the incident. Tell me when you're there. Yeah, I'm there. Okay. Now, scan through to the end of that incident. So now we go through it a second or third time. And there's more details, the earlier beginning, right? The one goon grabs me, the other goon grabs me, and then we just they pull me down through my floor into the earth, into these underground tunnels. And now they're dragging me and pulling me, and I'm fighting, and I'm scared, and they're dragging me, and they're fooling around, and they're doing stuff and laughing it up, and they're just dragging me. And then we get back to the chamber again, and she sees more. What happens next? They throw her at the foot of the goon, the giant, the king goblin guy, and he gets up out of his chair and walks over, grabs her by the hair, and blah, blah, blah. The rest of the creepy sexual molestation incident unfolds. And there's a part where it kind of locks up, it just stops, and this is usually where there's too much trauma and it's hard to remember. So after this time through the incident, I say, all right, does this incident have a later ending? And bam, she sees the very end where she's being basically thrown back out of the caves, sort of thing. Bang, bam, pwop. And okay. Now move to the earlier beginning of the incident. Tell me when you're there. So she moves back to the beginning. It's a traumatic incident reduction technique. She gets back to the beginning, and I go, okay, scan through to the end of that incident, to the later ending, paying particular attention to any commands that they gave you. So this time she goes through, and she says, well, they're telling me to shut up, and you're not going to remember any of this, and get over it, bitch. And as they're dragging her through the tunnels, and they throw her in front of the king goblin guy, and she goes through all those details, and you're not going to remember anything, so shut up. And blah, 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 sexual abuse, this, that, and the other thing. But Star is able to confront more of it, and the emotional stuff is coming off. The fear, the anger, the frustration, and all this stuff. And so she's releasing the emotional energy of it, and she sees the later ending and how it all ended. And so basically, she's got the entire story. All right. So now what we do We want to empower her and disempower these goons and goblin guys. Because this is not an imaginary dream experience. And she realizes this isn't just a nightmare. She says, this really happened. It was almost a surprise to her. This really happened. So yeah, it did, and it does. So now I go, okay, this time what we're going to do is we're going to rerun the incident and we're going to change it up. You are an incredibly powerful creative being, and you can change these other realms with your thoughts and your intentions. So we ran through the incident again. She's more empowered. She shakes off the goons and she slaps them around a little bit, and they're totally surprised. But, they back off, and then she just goes on through the tunnels and meets the King Goblin, and they have a different kind of discussion. And she grabs him by he's got this kind of necklace and chain thing, grabs him, pulls him down off his chair, slaps him around a little bit, and she could have killed him, annihilated him, but we're taking the high road. So she just gives him a really severe warning. Don't you ever do that sort of thing again with me. I will come back here and I will threaten, do all this terrible stuff. And he's like, okay.
Hi, I'm Kristen, and today I'll be talking about an interaction that I had with a wraith or succubus-like entity. So back in 2015, I was living in Tennessee, and one particular night I was having what I thought was a dream. So in this dream, I was laying flat on my back in my bedroom, and I was seeing my room as it normally is. So it looked exactly as it does in real life. I could see the door to my bedroom. I could see the window to my left-hand side. Just everything looked exactly as it does in real life. And so when I woke up, I suppose, within this dream, I felt like I was waking up in real life, but I hadn't. And what I immediately saw was something floating over me slightly to my left. So a few inches above me, there appeared to be a woman. And this woman, she was completely cloaked in black linen fabric. And the first thing that caught my eye was the end of her dress. And so I couldn't see her feet, but I saw this almost voluminous, but kind of large, moving dress that was just completely smooth. It didn't have any adornments on it or anything like that. But the way that the dress moved at the bottom was kind of like moving underwater, like swaying a bit. At the time, I didn't realize I was dreaming, but I had this kind of feeling of being in awe. And so while a normal person might think seeing something hovering over them is horrifying and scary, wearing this, again, long black dress, and it also had like a small like hood that went over it, my immediate reaction was like, oh, this is beautiful, this is interesting, this is curious, I suppose. And at that time in my life, I had been involved in the spiritualist community for many years. And so I had only left the church shortly before I had moved out of state. And so at that time, thinking that I was awake and that I was kind of looking at this ghost over me, I didn't think it was scary or terrifying at all. I just thought it was quite pretty. And I couldn't get a good look at the face of this woman who was over me, but she had her arms up and kind of like up over near the top of my chest. And she had very long, thick black hair that was kind of a little bit wavy. And again, she had like this kind of, again, like some semi-transparent black linen kind of hood that was over it. So I couldn't clearly see her face, but I could clearly see her wrist and her hand that were kind of sticking out of the end of her sleeve. And so her sleeve was kind of like a big bell sleeve that was kind of hanging down. And so even her sleeve as well kind of like had this kind of like rippling water motion to it. And I remember in this state of awe, not really trying to look at her face, but I was trying to touch her clothing. Just because of the way that it was moving, it just seemed very ethereal and otherworldly. It didn't seem like the way that actual fabric would move in real life. And so in this dream or this astral projection that I was having, I vividly remember raising up my hands and touching the sleeve of this being. And I remember feeling the fabric, and it was hard, and it was almost felt like starchy when you put too much starch onto a piece of fabric that you're going to iron. And it was thick, and I could feel like underneath my fingertips this feeling of like the weave of the linen. So I could see that it was linen, but I could very clearly like feel like every thread as I was touching it. And so as I was touching this woman's or this being's dress, she didn't seem to move at all. It was just still like kind of like this like mildly moving, floating, like completely horizontal over the top of my body. And I probably had a couple seconds of touching the sleeve, and then I woke up. And so at the time, I thought it was kind of like a very beautiful dream or a beautiful astral projection that I was having. I couldn't clearly see this woman, this entity, whatever she was, her face, but her hands were quite thin. I would say emaciated, but it almost like looked like how a model's hands look. So her hands, like you could clearly see the tendons and her joints and everything like that. But it was in a very ethereal, thin, beautiful type of way that her hands looked. And so after I had that happen, because it wasn't scary and there wasn't really anything that happened, it was just me touching a piece of fabric, this long black hooded dress. I didn't mention it to anybody. I just thought like that was a really strange and pretty dream, and I kind of went on about my day. And so my mother had been visiting my family at the time, and so that later that day after I had woken up, we decided to go out to a vineyard. And at that time, I wasn't particularly drinking, and I've never really liked wine, so I wasn't getting anything while we were there. So I was off on my own while the rest of my family was inside, like picking out which samples of wines that they wanted to sample. And when they had finished and they had come out of the building, they had like these little boxes of like little samplers. I saw my mother and my husband talking in the distance, and I started walking towards them. And when I came up on their conversation, I heard my husband saying to my mother, "Oh, I didn't want to tell her because I thought she would get afraid, or she would be scared, or something like that, something along those lines." And because I just heard the tail end of the conversation, I was like, who did you not want to say something to? And my husband and my mom kind of like exchanged glances back and forth, like again, like almost like this kind of feeling of like, do we tell her? Are we going to mention right now, like what we were just talking about? And my husband said that I saw something on you last night. And I was like, that's odd. Well, like, what did you see? And he proceeded to explain that he saw a woman hovering over me the night before. And obviously I had this very clear memory of this what I considered beautiful woman that was hovering over me. And my husband went on to describe that he saw a woman straddling me. And so that's not what I saw when I had this kind of dream projection image in my mind, or what I had actually seen, like possibly with like my astral body or my soul. He told me that he saw this woman with both of her legs on both sides of me, almost like with her thighs kind of like wrapped around my lower ribs or upper stomach, and she was completely full on just leaning over my face. And he said that he saw her mouth open, and it was almost like he said like from Harry Potter, like the wraiths that you see, like, or the Death Eaters, where they start sucking the soul out through the person. He said it seemed like this woman had been like trying to suck something out of me when he saw her. And again, he described her as wearing all black, and he described her as having like thick black or very dark hair. But again, because he saw her from the side when he was on the other side of the bed, he couldn't get a good look at her face either. He just kind of saw this outline or silhouette of her face, like kind of sucking. And so that was pretty scary to hear in the moment that I didn't get a look at her face. Like based on like where her arms and her hands were when I saw her, I didn't clearly look at her head, but it seemed like it was slightly down into the left side of my own. But he saw her completely aligned with my own. And so just thinking about it, I have kind of come to the conclusion that it was probably what we consider a succubus. It's something that kind of takes your life force or is trying to gain energy from you. I just find it very interesting that usually when you hear other experiencers talking about meeting these types of beings or entities, that they describe the woman on top of them as looking like a hag or looking very ugly, just being completely horrifying. And my immediate reaction was like, oh, like there's a visitor in the room and she's really pretty, and it's like I don't mind her being here. And just waking up from that dream, it wasn't a nightmare or that astral projection. It wasn't scary. It was just something that happened, and I was completely fine with it. Until I heard my husband's story and found out that she would seem to be taking something from me. So thankfully I haven't had anything like that happen again. But I am curious of if it did happen again, if I would be afraid the second time around, or if I would have that same kind of reaction of awe and this feeling of I want to know more. I want to know like what this being is, who she is, where she came from, what is her life on whatever dimension or space that she lives in. What does that look like? I mean, I have so many questions about how these types of entities kind of exist. Yeah, it's pretty interesting. So if you've ever had an interaction with like one of these types of entities that kind of like looks wraith-like in long types of robes, or a succubus that like very clearly is trying to kind of get into your energy and into your space, I'd love to hear about it. So thank you so much for listening today, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.